Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. I'm super excited for Amy. She's headed off to Crime Con. Crime Con? It's Crime Con, right, Amy?
Mm-hmm.
Very. It's so exciting. She's already had a few listeners reach out and want to meet up with her there, and that's not really something that I know that Amy is used to. It happens a lot of times when I go to conferences with her, which I love, right? Like meeting listeners and stuff. And Amy's like, oh, because you basically don't like to leave your house. But
no, I typically have a 5-mile bubble that includes kids' sports and the bare necessities.
right, exactly. So she has people that want to meet up with her at CrimeCon, and her dance card is getting full. And welcome to my world, Amy.
I know it's very exciting
when I go to conferences. I will say though, it's really I know this is all really brand new territory for you, but it's fun to put a face with a name. I mean, I have met people that I'm still really friendly with at the Florida Writers Conference. And I say really friendly with, it's not like I have them over for dinner, but who I know, and I follow them on social media. And I really feel like you create these connections with people when you meet them in person, which is very different from being behind email. Mm-hmm. But again, I know it's a new thing. I'm sure CrimeCon is going to be great. Although by the time this hits, I think it'll already be over. So hopefully you'll have some really good scoop. I have a whole list of people that I want you to meet on my behalf and tell them that I love them. Sorry.
I can do that.
Is it weird that I'm starting to crush on some of these hosts? I'm like, you sound really lovely.
No, that's the whole reason I'm going.
I love it. That is so awesome. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. You are my people. Well, unfortunately, this is not a true crime podcast, although we do oftentimes talk about how authors kill their book marketing. In fact, somebody asked me that on a call yesterday. She said, can you tell? And I almost busted out laughing because I was just in the middle of this great true crime podcast, as I often am. But she said, can you tell me, are there ways that I can kill my book? And I was like, literally? Is there something you want to confess to me on this call? But yes, so oftentimes we do talk about how authors can kill their book or their book marketing. But today, we are focused on non-traditional ways to market your book. And one of the things that I love about this is because so often authors they don't want to take the road less traveled, right? They want to go, they belong to writers groups or some kind of Facebook group or something, and they want to do what everybody else is doing because it's tried and it's tested. And I get that. But the beauty with non-traditional marketing is that there are fewer books that are cluttering the space because a lot of authors don't know how to do it or don't know where to get started. And so hopefully this podcast will kind of help you. And let me just say right up front, fiction or nonfiction doesn't matter. This applies across the board. So Amy, do you want to kick this off?
Sure. So our first one, non-bookstore retail. We work with a lot of authors that want to get in local bookstores. We're big fans of that. But for what it's worth, a lot of bookstores have very specific processes, requirements, things like that. It's totally possible. But Penny, wouldn't you say most authors weren't really prepared for all those checks and balances when it comes to retail? Yeah, yes. It gets a little more complex. Again, totally doable. But I think it kind of takes the wind out of their sails a little bit once we give them like the short list of like, okay, these are the requirements for getting into a retail bookstore. And they're like, oh, this all of a sudden got a lot less exciting. But non-traditional bookstore retail can be really fun because there really aren't a lot of set rules here, which is great. As much of a rule person as I am, like when it comes to getting creative with your marketing and your branding and collaborations, I think the fewer rules, the better. Because a lot of people are really open-minded to doing something new and different for their customers, their patrons. But just like authors, they get stuck in the grind, the day-to-day. So I think presenting something really unique and fun and different is mutually beneficial a lot of times. You just have to be prepared to present it in the right way. So as long as the retail space, as long as their patrons and your readers are kind of one and the same, and your book, matches the vibe of the shop or whatever, it's definitely worth chatting with the owner and kind of talking about what some of the options are. And again, get creative, go above and beyond just, I want you to stock my book. Because again, that's when you start getting into more complex contracts and requirements and things like that. But there's plenty of places, Penny, you and I have both seen this, where there's just, a small stack of books. It's not filling a whole shelf. It's just kind of, it's there. It's probably a local author and it's featured or something like that. And it's a really cool way to do it. You can sell them just a few copies to start. Definitely ask if they have any special events coming up that you can potentially participate in. I can tell you right now, it's warming up where I am, and so many boutiques and retailers are doing fun events that include an outdoor space. Kind of everybody's getting excited for warmer weather. That would be a prime opportunity to show up and get involved in one of their events. And even by getting your foot in the door by offering a free, sign it, of course, a signed copy to the owner just so they can familiarize themselves with it, that's one step closer to potentially coming up with a cool collaboration where your book can be featured in their store. And
Yeah.
like we say with a lot of things, like with media, same goes for retail. Once you're in one store, it's amazing how much easier it gets to get yeses from other locations as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And actually, it's interesting because when I was first in business 24 years ago, oh my gosh, it feels like only yesterday, but we had we obviously we've always to a greater degree focused on independent authors. And it was lots and lots of bookstores, but it was nearly impossible at that time to get into bookstores. It's much easier now, but it was nearly impossible to get into bookstores. So we did a lot of non-bookstore retail and not just placing books. Actually, the majority wasn't actually even placing books. The majority was doing author events in non-bookstore markets. So this is really going to date me, but we used to have a Blockbuster Video literally just not a mile from my house. And I did an event there with an author who had a book on the best wine, like wine pairings to go with movies, which, here's a throwback for anybody who remembers Blockbuster. Like, what that was so fun, like on a Friday evening, drop in there on the way home and pick up a movie. And there's this author sitting there with this wine. You're like, oh, what a great idea. So in terms of vibe match, as Amy said, that's a great match. Obviously, there are no more video stores, sadly, although there's one in Bend, Oregon. So if you aspire to doing something, you could definitely do it there. But I mean, there's still a lot of non-retail. In fact, I've done events in Starbucks, I've done events in Hallmark. And here's the interesting thing about doing non-bookstore retail is that, yes, you can go to boutique stores, mom and pop stores, and those obviously the decision to stock your book or not stock your book starts and ends with them. But in stores like Hallmark and Starbucks, the managers usually have the ability to do quote unquote community outreach. And sometimes that means stocking a book, sometimes that means doing an event with an author without having to go through all the corporate channels, which will take you months and months. So that's another thing to consider too, is that non-bookstore retail. I love non-bookstore retail to the degree that you can figure out like if you have a craft book, and we have an author that we worked with who has and actually I did a call with her. I did a follow-up call with her just recently, and man, her book has done well. Not to brag, but I mean, obviously she has a really, really good book, and it's a Christian devotional around alcoholism. And I told her, I said, the natural fit to me for this would be Hobby Lobby. You've got to walk it into the store. Because if you go into, and actually any craft store, they have lots of books, lots and lots of books. And in particular, the reason that I mentioned Hobby Lobby is because the majority of their books, the front of the store, have nothing to do with crafts. None of them actually have anything to do with crafts. The books that they stock, they're all faith-based. So that vibe match, you could do endless things with the non-bookstore retail. I'm really thrilled we started with that. The second one is the bulk sales. And this is something that I used to do a lot of. We don't really do that anymore. We actually don't do that anymore. I consult a lot on this. And um, part of the bulk sales is that much like with the bookstores, it's got to be some kind of a match, right? Um, and it has to be something that um, it has to be something that really feels like it's going to resonate with their audience. And so I sold books to Southwest Airlines, and it was a customer service book, and it was for one of their conferences. That's the kind of match that I'm thinking of, that I'm suggesting. Now, when you sell your book in bulk, keep in mind that it's better, you'll make a better profit if you have the book offset printed. And I want to get in the weeds just a little bit on this, just because it will make a difference to your bottom line, right? So if offset printing a book is a cheaper way of printing than it is to get to go through print on demand, which I know the majority of us do. However, what I suggest that you do is identify your bulk sale targets and then get the orders before you do the printing. So if you get an order for 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, right? Then you can go and you can get those books printed up, get the print pricing and be ready to go with the printer. So don't be like, oh my gosh, I have a order for 10,000. Now I have to find a printer. No. Be ready to go with that. You also need to know the printing because you want to be able to price the book, right? You want to be able to price the book sale. With bulk sales, you're going to be looking at, and I have an exact breakdown, I think in one of my books. You're going to be looking at, so let's say, for example, if they buy 10 books or something on the lower end, you're going to give them maybe a 20% discount. If they buy 1,000 books, you're going to give them maybe a 40% discount or a 45% discount. And it just goes up from there to the point that by the time you get to 10,000, you're basically giving them like 75% off the retail price, which means that you'd better be getting your book printed at a really inexpensive rate. Now, again, if you're doing the math on this, and let's say, for example, you're only making like a $2 profit on your book, if you're selling it at 75% off retail, you're still making on 10,000 books, you're still making a really good income. So that's part of the reason why I say get your ducks in a row. The bulk sales stuff is really, really, it's really good. Amy, you were not here yet when we were doing bulk sales, were you? But you've talked to a lot of our authors about it too.
Yes, correct. I was not here when we were still doing bulk sales, but it is definitely a question that comes up. And I would say it's definitely more on the radar for people in certain industries. I will say most authors that are thinking about this, it typically fits the mold. They're in an industry where they realize there is like an education need, like you said, the customer service book for an airlines, that makes a lot of sense. Businesses across industries benefit from educating their employees. So you want to tap into that. And this goes along with the, just like we do a lot of show episodes on media and pitching, and this also, you need to follow that through. So to Penny's point, you need to have your math figured out, but you also have to pitch this properly. You need to make it make sense for them. So you mentioned conference, Penny, special events, retreats. Those are also great opportunities where businesses are doing education. They're doing training. If you can align your book with kind of that mindset, like this would be a great part of your training, a great part of your internal education. And I want to say it's worth keeping in mind also that you will have better luck with this if you have a standout resume, if your book is already doing well. We're talking positive reviews, some media coverage, if you're pitching media, if you've had some interviews, guest, articles, things like that. At least one vibrant social media account also helps a lot because, again, nobody's going to think about this too much. But if if your book stands out, you stand out. As Penny said, you can make the math make sense. and you can pinpoint exactly how they can utilize your book, again, retreat, conference, special event, something like that, that's when they go, oh, okay, it make the decision easy for them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that you have to the more that you can closely align with any particular um target, it tells them both that you understand what they're about, but also that you understand your market. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it makes
Yeah.
it makes the sales so much easier.
Yes, you are helping them out, make their job easier, make their education of their employees easier, make their next retreat or conference that much better. That's what you need to tap into to convince the people they get to decide yes or no, that this is something they want to get involved in. And this is very much closely linked to our next one, our next recommendation, which are trade publications, right,
Mhm,
Penny?
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start the trade publications? Do you want me to run with it?
Sure. No. Well, I mean, and again, these are very closely linked. So
They
knowing your
are.
industry, knowing where you shine, getting features, interview, and this is another area too where I'm like, get creative and kind of open your mind to where the great opportunities are. So features, interviews, mentions, those are quality impressions. I also love these because you are going directly to who you need to talk to. Trade versus mass market media options. Mass market media options, it's kind of like I think of it as kind of like doing ads on social media, Penny. Like you're filtering through a lot of not the right people to hopefully get in front of some of the right people. Whereas if you put your focus on trade publications, trade magazines, trade newsletters, you know that you are getting in front of a lot of the right people with every yes that you get. So the numbers make a lot more sense in terms of where you're going to focus your efforts.
Yeah. Yeah. And we actually did a podcast, I think it was last year. We did a podcast on media and specifically trade media. And
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of trade media because if you search if you do a search for anything from quilting to coal mining, right? I mean, you will find so many publications, and some of them may just be online. But there's, if you go into like a Barnes and Noble and down their magazine, take a gander through all the magazines that Barnes and Noble still carries. It kind of blows your mind. It's like, wow, like where those are all trade publications. And here's the thing, they are always looking for content because a lot of times the farther that you go down on the media food chain, right? So you have the top tier media is national media, and then you have local media, and then you have trade media. A lot of times the guy running the magazine is the same guy doing the photographs, is the same guy doing the editing, is also the same guy taking out the trash, right? So he's also janitor. So this usually, a lot of times they're one or two person operations. They're always in need of content. So the easier that you can make it for them by getting in touch, by contacting them, offering to let them run an excerpt of the book or even write an article for their publication. It's keep in mind with the trade publication, they are 100% your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I think is not, people are, authors are not really paying enough attention to this. We did a newsletter, and this goes back quite a ways, but it was a book that was about this girl, this woman who found who found her father's letters home during World War II. And some of them were to his then girlfriend, then later fiance, then later wife. Um, and she published them in a book. And we pitched that to the genealogy newsletter, and they picked it up, and she sold thousands and thousands of copies of that book because it was a complete 100% market match. And as Amy pointed out, that's really hard to do these days. You know,
Extremely. It's very noisy out there.
it's very, very noisy out there. And speaking of speaking of market matches, the next one is gift boxes. So I have an admission to make. have a weird addiction to subscription boxes. Like I don't currently have any, just saying that I'm part of a support group now. I don't have any, but they're so fun. And um they oftentimes have books in them, right? And they're usually books, it depends on the gift box, right? So a true crime gift box would have obviously a true crime book in it. A gift box for children would have something related to, children. So there has to be that kind of a market match. But the thing about it is, though, is that it's not, surprisingly, it's not that difficult to get in them. You just have to be persistent. So you can reach out to them on their website. There isn't some sort of secret club that you have to belong to get into gift boxes, but just reach out to them and ask them for their guidelines. And many times it's going to be kind of the same situation as bulk sales, is they're going to say, well, we want a price on buying 5,000 copies of your book or something like that.
Sure.
Gift boxes. And this is trade publications tends to skew a little bit more to nonfiction, but gift boxes definitely goes fiction or nonfiction, because you've gotten some gift boxes too that have had books in them, have you not?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and I would say too, this is a really cool option for anybody that does also a non-traditional, like book. So
Yeah.
journals, meditations,
Yes. Yes.
things like that, because, we deal with that all the time, Penny, where when we get those authors, what's interesting is a lot of the quote unquote typical marketing strategies don't always work for books like that. But this is one area where they really stand out,
Yeah. Yeah. And it is something that surprisingly, there aren't a lot of gift boxes, like reader gift boxes, right? Where you get 3 books a month or 5 books a month or something, and and I think a lot of that becomes more challenging just because the cost of the books and the mailing and the becomes heavier when you include books, etc. But then you also have, subscriber things like Kindle Unlimited and
Mhm.
Audible and things like that. So book specific gift boxes are become a little bit more challenging, I think, just to scale. But subscriber boxes are very popular. They are so popular. And what's interesting is that when when I was doing one of the sales points when I was doing book sales to companies was that if you're doing, like Amy talked about, special events and conferences and things like that, if you think back to the swag bag that you got at this event, it was probably full of things like a pen and maybe a bookmark and maybe like some kind of like little mini keychain flashlight.
Another crappy water bottle. Sorry.
Right. Or another oh my gosh, another coffee mug, like, right, um, and and but what's interesting is that the majority of us do not throw away books. Like, we'll toss the pen and and I'm sorry to say, even the little mini keychain flashlight, which really only works like 3 days and then it just breaks. They're just usually so cheaply made, but we typically don't throw away books. And so that's one of the reasons that putting a book in a gift box tends to have a much higher monetary appeal for the person signing up for the subscription service too. So, and there's
Mhm.
also, I know this because Amy gave it to me one year at Christmas. There's a wine gift box, of course. She would give me wine, which was very, very well received. Every now and again, like I'll still order one of their one-off gift boxes because their wine is just unbelievably good. But they have gift boxes. So the wine comes. It's a company called Vino, and you get the gift box, but then you also get you get the wine, but then you also get a fun little gift box, and there are books in there too. So it doesn't always have to be like the traditional subscription boxes that we've become accustomed to. A lot of these companies have these subscription boxes. I mean, for a while, weren't you also getting the butcher box,
Oh,
Amy?
I still get that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would
I
too,
know.
if I had more people to feed or and a bigger freezer, I would absolutely get that. But I mean,
But
think
I've
about
definitely gotten one-off boxes. I think a lot of companies realized that they needed to have those available as well, because they're great for holidays. They're great for birthday. You know what I mean? And not everybody wants to sign up for something forever. So I
Right.
think that's another excellent opportunity also, is that depending on your book, again, I think always the more specific and unique and thoughtful you can make your pitch, the better.
Yeah.
So think about, maybe it makes sense to pitch your book for a very specific box or for a very specific season or month or tied to a specific holiday. And by making that very thoughtful next level connection for them, you'll stand out versus somebody just shooting them an email and saying like, I have a great book, everybody likes it, I want to be in your, in one of your boxes. If
Right.
the
Right.
more
Right.
effort you put into and the more thought you put into really making it make sense for them, the more likely they will to respond and potentially engage with you and try to figure out how something might work out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, think about like with that butcher box, how fun it would be around, especially around summers for your like your summer box, right? If you got this really cool cookbook on grilling, right? I mean, it's such a great, it's such a great match.
Well,
Um,
and that's a very good point, Penny. A lot of these subscription places too, they will do regular monthly subscriber specials. So you don't automatically get it, but they feature it on their site as like an add-on. So, that's always something too to consider, that not all boxes are going to be, a lot of companies I see are doing that as well. So this is your base that you're getting every month because they've already got you in for that, but they will, notify you if there's something special to add or a discount or whatever. And like you said, that could be, your book could be one of those things that they could opt to add in. And again, you're still getting those great impressions.
yeah, 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 exactly. And I know that we want to wrap, I know Amy has a final idea that we want to close the show out with, but I think it's worth mentioning that you probably don't want to go into any of these ideas if your book is right off the printing press.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're getting, that you've got some, that you have some momentum built up for the book, right? That you have reviews on Amazon, um, maybe even some media coverage or some influencer coverage, or a solid social media account. So you don't want to just show up kind of brand new and say, I don't have anything, but would you consider, because especially in particular these gift boxes, that's going to be part of your sales pitch, is going to be your portfolio or the book's portfolio.
Right. And anything that we're mentioning, they are essentially bringing you into the fold as part of their brand. So think about what a big ask that is.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Penny. Show up ready to impress. They are not going, realistically, they're not going to take a chance on a brand new author with their first book with 0 reviews, no website yet. I mean, it's just, there's too much risk involved for them with that. So show up with the best version of what you have to offer when you go after these. And, these are not things necessarily we're recommending as an out of the gate, your first month your book is out sort of thing. Like, hopefully your book will be around for a very long time and will continue to gain momentum. So these are all great ideas to put on the back burner for, maybe look at the 6-month mark. You know what I mean? If your book doesn't take off right away, that doesn't mean these options aren't on the table for you. You just need to wait until the timing is right, which also gives you time to prep for these, especially with the math stuff.
Okay.
But I do have one more, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things that, until it happened, I probably never would have thought about it, but I was like, that's so cool. So now that we've talked about gift boxes, this was not planned. Now I want to talk about one more out of the box type of collaboration. So there's a skincare company I use. They very much are focused on natural ingredients, things like that. And I noticed, I got one of their emails. They did a feature calling attention to a children's book that was written by the owner of one of the small farms that they source some of their ingredients from. And it was a children's book based on, it was very farm centric. It made sense, but it's like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought I would have been pitched a book by a skincare company, but it totally made sense. It was an adorable book. Again, this is just a small family farm who happened to have, a great connection with this small skincare company that's a little under the radar. But it was such a cool concept. And I absolutely checked out a book. It was a little too young for my kiddos, but I thought, how smart of them. You know what I mean? To think, how can I tap into my current network and reach people that I normally wouldn't be able to reach, you know? And there was another example. Again, this was something local. There's a sports training facility. My kids go there. They actually promoted, by the sense of, you know, on their social media, they did put it in an email announcement, one of their newsletters, for a baseball coach at a local university. He wrote a book on positive mindset. It was very sports centric. But again, these two companies are not necessarily related, but they have a similar audience. And so it made sense. And again, they're not stocking copies. They're not doing any of that. It was quite literally, we will send out a message to our people because we want to support you. And I think nearly any of you listening have similar opportunities locally and available to you if you kind of get creative and think about what really makes sense for your book, for your market. Just knowing who your reader is beyond what they like to read is really important for all of these. And then you just start brainstorming and approaching people with creative ideas. And I think in this day and age, Penny, a lot of people are really open to out of the box creative ideas, because we're all so overstimulated with the usual stuff. These really thoughtful, unique concepts, I think, have the chance to stand out even more nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that totally. I love that. You had mentioned that skincare to me in text one time. And I love that they did that. But I think that it's not enough. I hope that this has opened up some doors, even just mentally, just giving some ideas to things that you can do as an author to get your book out there, because there's nothing wrong with taking the traditional roads, but man, these alternative ways to market your book can really be powerful, and you can sell a lot of books. And I've actually known authors that have gotten into non-traditional markets, and that's literally all that they do. So I think if you can find your vibe, if you can find your market match, if you can find something that works for you, because the other thing is that all of this stuff, these options are potentially repeat. So if they do well, like the bulk sales, they're going to keep buying them. Right. So it's a really good opportunity. And, like I said, it is a really, really good way to get your book out in front of a bigger market where there's less competition and hopefully more attention and more sales for your book. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to just thank, everybody who writes in and tells us about that they, are enjoying the show or review the show wherever they listen to podcasts, which I know, as we've talked about before, is not always easy. And we love show ideas. As I mentioned, we really love show ideas. We also love it when you share a show with a friend. So feel free to click that share button and share the show, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.